Superhot, Mind Control Delete. The DLC turned into its own full standalone game. But was it worth it? Well, I guess we will try and answer that today in this review. So, what is different from the base game? The core gameplay is the same. Of course, that's the one thing you wouldn't want to change. Time moves when you move, but the idea in this game was putting this mechanic into a sort of roguelike. What do I mean by that? Well, unlike the first Superhot game that followed a very linear story structure, this one takes more of a grid-like dungeon layout, as you will pick the stages you play, and this is where the individual stages will have that roguelike experience, as the levels within them will be randomized and dying will mean repeating the stage. Unlike the original Superhot, here you will have 3 lives, as beating so many levels in a row with a single life would be definitely unfair, especially given that sometimes cheap deaths can happen, like for example an enemy spawning right behind you. Along with the life systems, there are upgrades, or as they call them here, hacks. You will get them by progressing within a stage, and they are temporary to that stage. Things like more health or ammo, stronger punches. These are the more boring type of upgrades that mostly make the game easier only by marginally changing how you play the level. You can get new ones by finishing certain stages. Something else that you also get from specific stages is the cores. These are special abilities that you can pick outside of a stage, and this is what truly affects the way you play in a more interesting way. Things like changing bodies with an enemy or being able to use your katana like a boomerang. And these upgrades are definitely the core, no pun intended, pushing you along the game, as the levels, while random, they are only a set number of them. You'll be seeing the same levels a lot. And given that this game is much longer than the original, this can get rather jarring towards the end. It doesn't help that the story also feels repetitive, and to me it didn't feel meaningful. Maybe I'm missing something, but it felt like it was weird for weird's sake. Something that does add more variety to the gameplay is this thing that is introduced later on in the game. They're unkillable bosses type of enemies, each one of them with their unique abilities, such as lunging at you or throwing a katana. These enemies reflect some of the cores you can obtain in the game. They show up randomly at first. I found them rather frustrating, but once you learn how to avoid them, they become more of just a minor annoyance. The game also added a couple new enemies, which I personally enjoyed more than the bosses. You have characters that can only be killed by being hit in a certain spot in their body, being that their body is white, with the exception of their weakness, which is red, like the other enemies in the game, which is a nice addition in challenge, but sometimes it can feel a tad finicky, especially when the weak spots are the arms. There is also now enemies whose weapons are glued to them, in a sense that this is telegraphed by having guns having the same red color as the enemies and you not being able to steal them. This leads me to briefly mention that this game, while it introduces new weapons and guns, they all mostly do the same things, but it is nice to feel like I have more variety of things to grab and throw at enemies in a pinch. The only noticeably different gun is a sort of ray gun that ignores the stop time and it fires instantly. The other enemy they added that was personally the one I enjoyed the most was the spiky character that will explode after death. Its explosion can damage you and the enemy, so it can be used in a tactical and beneficial way while still being a risk. There is also traps that have the same effect as this enemy, sometimes scattered across the levels, walls and floor, that you will have to be on the lookout for, as they add that extra bit of challenge. Personally, I wish that the ones on the floor were easier to notice when you're close to them, but it's a minor complaint. In terms of difficulty, it mostly comes from its roguelike design. No level on its own is ever going to be impossibly difficult, but they can be hard, and when you put them in consecutive order, mistakes are bound to happen. This is where most of my ctrl+delete's difficulty and difficulty spikes are. I definitely find myself dying a lot as stages with one too many levels started showing up. Overall, this game is okay. If you're just dying for more superhot, then yes, this is something you will want to try out. But if you had your fill with the original, then probably stay away from this one. Maybe it should have stayed as a DLC. For me, its repetitiveness far outweighs its new features to be an enjoyable experience. Maybe if it was half as long, it would have been more enjoyable, but as it stands, it isn't. So, that's it. And that's my review of Superhot Mind Control Delete. This was a shorter review than usual. I don't have a lot to say about this game. It was a game I played in a day, and then I wanted to write a review about it. So that's about it. So please subscribe. Be sure to do all the YouTube things like liking and maybe clicking that bell. I don't know if that does anything. I don't know. But anyways, regardless of what you do, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.